Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dee Reinhardt with Illinois WorkNet. Today we're going to be talking about tax credits that your business can use to save money when you are hiring or expanding your business. Today our guest speaker is Eric Levenhagen from McGladrey. He has a lot of experience with economic development, but he now works with McGladrey's National Business Credits and Incentives practice, helping clients expand on their business and find the credits and incentives that you can use to make your business a little bit more profitable when you want to hire new people. So welcome, Eric, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me and everyone attending.
All right.
And again, I'm part of our National Business Incentives team. We'll talk specifically about Illinois today, but from time to time I might take a step back and talk about the Midwest or other states, just puts into perspective other incentive programs. And at the time of this recording, as well, you may know, since early June, Governor Rauner has suspended the majority of the Illinois incentives that we might discuss today during his budget negotiations with the legislature. And so that's still ongoing. The Illinois Department of Commerce and Opportunity is still accepting applications on a lot of programs, but a lot of the final approvals are on hold as they get direction on those next steps.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Well, let's get started. It's all about business growth. People hire new people when they have new positions, and they get new positions when they grow their business. So that's what it's all about, is getting that business to grow. So first thing that we want to do is we want to talk about employer hiring credits, and that is the first few of these incentives that we're going to be talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Eric so that he can talk about the small business job creation tax credit that's available.
Great. So this program was created in 2012, a different governor. It runs through June 30th, 2016 by statute, so certainly one of those programs that will be evaluated with a new governor. But in its current state, companies under 50 staff are eligible as they create new jobs going forward. There's a tax credit for up to $2,500 per new job. And it's looking at a variety of industries, so it could even be non-for-profit, a variety of types of small businesses. You do need to pay over $10 an hour or annual salary of about $18,000. And the positions need to be sustained for at least 1 year. So again, this is net new job creation. And really it comes off your state income tax returns, or the withholding tax that would normally go to Illinois. But you need to get registered with Illinois Department of Economic Opportunity and do a background check. Just make sure the business registration tax ID matches up with Department of Revenue, and if those checks go through, then that's where you can receive these certifications to put on your state tax return.
Great. That's great news. Let's do a check real quick to see who's in our audience right now. So do we have some business owners, or are you the financial representative from your company, or maybe you're a job seeker and you want to be aware of these things so that when you go in for an interview, you can share some of this information? Well, we have one person that answered the poll questions, so there we go. Now we've got a few other people answering. All right. Well, let's hide this poll question and move on to our next slide that talks about the EDGE program.
Great. And so this is a program we work with quite a bit. It can be lucrative for companies. So on this one, if you have less than 100 staff, then you actually just need to commit to 5 net new jobs over a 2-year period and an investment of $1 million. And the investment of $1 million, that is pretty broad. It could be lease payments, actually up to a 10-year period. It could be leasehold improvements, buying new equipment, several different kinds of investment. So easier to obtain for small business, whereas if you're over 100 employees, those thresholds go up to 25 net new jobs or at least $5 million investment over the next few years. With this one, the Illinois Edge, it does need to be competitive, so it need to show proof that you're looking out of state as well and show a cost comparison on that evaluation of expanding in Illinois versus another state. These are actually non-refundable credits used against your corporate income tax liability in Illinois, and this is not to exceed 10 years. And I say non-refundable. We deal with incentives in several other states where it's actually refundable. That actually becomes a cash rebate if you have zero negative tax liability in a given year, and you actually get a cash rebate from the Department of Revenue. So Indiana is one of those states, and several other. But just wanted to point that out with Illinois. It's non-refundable, so you actually do need that corporate income tax liability taken off your Illinois tax returns.
Right. Do you have anything else to add about the Edge?
Again, it's one of those programs you do need to get an application in to Illinois Department of Commerce, get it approved, same kind of background check with Department of Revenue, get all signed up with a contract, and then the compliance each year, submit year-end payroll and number of new jobs and proof of the investment, and that's how you can get the certifications to put on your state tax return. So this is a program being evaluated by the new governor, comparing to other states, like I mentioned, Indiana, to make it a refundable tax credit cash rebate. Yeah, they're looking at several ways to improve it and maybe get rid of some thresholds like that investment I mentioned. And overall, they're looking at an evaluation of the Illinois Department of Commerce, which right now is a full government agency, a public agency, but they might even privatize it if the governor gets his way. That would be like Ohio, it's completely privatized, or Indiana, a public-private organization that government employees, but a private foundation to help raise money and some extra protections there. So it'll be interesting how it plays out when they look to revamp this program going forward.
Definitely. The biggest thing about this, though, is the expansion and promising the opportunity of new jobs to employees in the area where the company wants to expand. So that's the great news about this program.
Yeah, and the promising thing, just an example, North Carolina today had their new governor legislature passed to get all their incentives back in. So there are several other states like Pennsylvania and California that have been going through some restructuring with new governors. So Illinois is not alone in suspending their incentives. So hopefully this will play out here soon, get all these back on and get final approvals going.
Great. I'm going to pull up another poll question here before we move on. Has anybody in the audience ever used a tax credit before when they were hiring their employees? Great. Excellent. All right, we're going to hide this poll and move on with our next slide. And this is the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. Now, if you download the presentation, all of these links are live for the websites that we have shared in the presentation. So, Eric, you want to tell me about the WOTC?
Sure. So this is actually a federal tax credit. So with this one, it's actually in hiatus with Congress, and it's been reinstated about 10 times over the last 30 years or so. It goes back to the Ronald Reagan administration, and it's been called several different names, but welfare to work, things like that. But now Work Opportunity Tax Credit, and we fully expect that Congress will probably pass it again later this year. So a lot of companies across the country are still screening and doing this credit even while they try to make it permanent or get it back in full approvals for another year. So this happens in the onboarding process as companies hire, and they need to have employees at least stay on 120 hours to trigger this tax credit for a certain amount of wages, or 400 hours would be get them up to the highest level tax credit. And the highest level tax credit is $9,600 for hiring a disabled military veteran, and there's several categories. The veterans have been the one bolstered recently by Congress for hiring through the Wounded Warrior Program, the Vow to Hire Act. Hiring unemployed military veterans is usually in that level, about $5,600. And the average credit that we see is generally about $2,000. And the highest category is new hires or their immediate family tied to food stamps or some kind of government assistance, and that's that SNAP that you see on the slide there, SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or food stamps. But unemployment benefits, things like that, it doesn't have to be that new hire. It could be their immediate family. So it's kind of broad, and that's where we see most of those tax credits come in around $2,400. So this one is good for all types of industries, again, as long as they have federal tax liability. That's the key, that it comes off as a general business credit. There is a carry forward up to 20 years if for some reason you didn't have a tax liability in a given year. But ultimately, you have 28 days that from the start date that you do this onboarding, and now you're allowed to do call center, web surveys, so it doesn't have to be an actual signature on a paper form like it used to be. In the last 3 years, the IRS has now allowed electronic signatures to get these proper forms into the State Department of Labor's. And the State Department of Labor's take about 6 to 9 months to get the final tax credit approvals for the potentially eligible hires. And then those tax credits, there's a form you put on your federal tax return to take this.
Great.
So yeah, again, it's a great tax credit for companies with high turnover, and there's a variety of industries: retail, hotels, restaurants, manufacturing, distribution. So at the end of the day, yeah, there's no requirement. Even small businesses, it could just be a few hires a year or whatever that you submit. There's no minimum threshold you have to submit. But at the end of the day, yeah, there is the guideline of getting it in within 28 days from the date of the hire to the State Department of Labor, and then they might follow up with questions such as their start date and wages, some other information just to get the final tax credit approval.
Is this also applicable for somebody who might hire a short-term employee? Like a
Yes.
temporary employee that maybe is going to help through the summer season or through the holiday seasons?
Yes, and that is even one of the categories is summer youth program. So temps and working with professional employer organizations, those are all eligible. Even those kind of staffing agencies, they actually take the tax credit and then maybe they leave that payroll and come over to your company. Now you can submit that new hire and try to get a tax credit because they're new to your company, new to your payroll. So yeah, certainly just as long as they hit that minimum threshold, 120 hours that they've worked. It could be just 3 or 4 weeks and a seasonal hire, and yeah, certainly that could go through as an eligible hire.
Excellent. Are we ready to move on to veterans now?
Yes.
All right. So tell us about some assistance that's available for veterans.
Right. So each state might have another tax credit in addition to that federal work opportunity tax credit, which has a big focus on the military veterans. Credit and allows even additional state tax credit up to $5,000 annually. You actually take this off your Illinois state tax returns. And same thing, you just show it's a certain amount of wages, and this one has to be longer. It must work at least 185 days during the tax year. So they want to see longer-term employment, more like 6 months or so, for the state tax credit. But yeah, certainly that is some information that you can just piggyback off the federal tax credit, get it on your state tax returns for hiring the veterans, and again, you have a maximum of $5,000 annually.
Now, I noticed that when I was making this slide that it referred to some more recent veteran service operations, but if somebody that had served in the Korean War and they still wanted to work, would this be applicable to them as well, or is it limited to Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom?
Right. Yeah, with Illinois, it is limited to the most recent military operations, so it would not go back to Korean War or Vietnam. Some other states are more lenient and go further back on that. I know West Virginia does that, and New York has some new legislation. But with Illinois, yeah, just most recent operations, I think more focused on employers getting them back on the payroll and getting them employed if they're having issues with unemployment from the recent military engagements.
Great, great. All right, so now one of the other things that's available to business is tax credits or assistance for hiring people with individuals with disabilities, and that WOTC credit is applicable. But the other things that are there to help you, and you can find information on the IRS website that we just posted in the chat pod, but there are opportunities for you to help that person be able to be accessible in the workplace. So if you need to remove a barrier and you need some assistance with that, there is a tax deduction available for that. So take a look at the resource that's on this particular link to see if there is any way that you can receive a tax credit for after hiring an individual with a disability to make accommodations for that person. And then next on our discussion today is some information about hiring in mature workers. And there is a program through the Illinois Area Agencies on Aging, and that link is the second one down on the page. That one is where individuals, and I believe the age starts at 55, but in most cases the individuals that are coming through that program are over 60, and what they do is they help place these individuals in positions. I believe it is a 6-month time period, and some of the wages are supplemented. So you might want to check into both of those programs, the Workforce 3-1 information, as well as the Illinois Area Agencies on Aging. You can enter your zip code to find a location that is closest to you. Now, the one good thing about hiring a mature worker is the fact that they have work experience and they probably have the technical skills that you need. They may need a couple of new things depending on whether there's a new machine or not, but they've also developed their soft skills. They know how to communicate with their employees, with their teammates. They know how to show up to work on time. They know how to follow directions. They have pride in their work, and they usually have a great work ethic because of the way that they've already been living through the system. So it's always good to investigate mature workers when you are working on hiring and finding out the programs that are available for them. Now, one of the other things that might come answer that poll question. You may not know the answer if you're not the person in charge, but in many cases, you want to protect your business. And so if you are going to be hiring somebody that has a poor credit history or a limited work history, or maybe they do have an arrest record, or they were imprisoned, or maybe they were dishonorably discharged from the military, you want to be able to protect and by getting a fidelity bond for these individuals, you have that ability to protect your business. So you can investigate fidelity bonding through the Illinois Department of Employment Security. Eric and I discussed some other programs that are available that might offer some credits, and a couple of these, Eric, if you want to take over and discuss a few of these on the list.
Sure. The Angel Investment Credit is another one you apply with the Illinois Department of Commerce, Economic Opportunity. They administer the program, and they're trying to attract and encourage investment in early stage companies, usually startups or a company just been around for a few years trying to get more investment from venture capital firms or private equity groups. So yeah, early stage innovative companies, there's $10 million allowed each year, so it's first come, first served basis, getting registered and to get that money awarded. And the new market tax credit is the next one on the list. This is highly specialized, has to be in a low income area, it has to meet a criteria that for a census bureau in an area that qualifies throughout Illinois. It's actually a federal tax credit, and it's supposed to help businesses and communities get capital funds more easily. Certainly, these are usually for bigger investment projects in low-income census tracts. And it can help, it partners up with these community development entities to basically help with about 40% of the equity investment, and then there's a 7-year credit allowance period. So that's a new market tax credit, federal. The research and development credit, there's actually a federal credit that up to 15%, but then most states follow up with their own research and development credit. So Illinois has one of those as well. And this could be for, this could even be for engineering, patent development, trying to create a new product, and sometimes it even gets into their wages and time spent on a new product and the research. So that is something that would, again, come off Illinois taxes is off the corporate income tax liability, and then also you can get the federal tax credit come off as a general business credit on federal tax returns.
And then there's a whole list of other things that people might want to investigate. Some of them are hiring credits depending on what you're doing with youth or training. At the bottom of the list is a link that will take you to the Illinois.gov page that has a whole list of finance opportunities, grants, loans, and incentives that are available to small business. Who is the best person to talk to that a small business owner might want to talk to find out how they can get these credits?
Well, you either deal with Illinois Department of Commerce, Opportunity, and then on the federal level, you might end up talking to someone at the Small Business Administration, SBA, or at the end of the day, you just talk to an outside advisor. Obviously, that's what I do on a daily basis to help get to the right spot and get these right application and tax credits taken care of. Some of these, obviously, research and development tax credit does come off tax returns, federal and state, so need to get it in the right spot and proper tax advice. But some of these, yeah, you definitely need to be registered with the state and federal agencies ahead of time.
And so your CPA, your accountant, the representatives at the small business development centers, they could all advise you of what might be available for you, and then you just have to check with the right person to make sure that it's applied properly on your tax returns and all the forms are filled out, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, right?
Correct. So yeah, obviously the advice from state representatives, Illinois Department of Commerce, or the federal, the SBDC or Small Business Association, they can get you registered and give you a certain amount information on it, but at the end of the day, they can't offer the tax advice and get it on your tax returns. They'll just get you signed up, certified, but then they would not have the tax advice to get it on your actual tax returns in the right spot.
All right, so checking with your CPA will really help. All right, let's move on to other tax credits and programs that are available that might not necessarily have to do with hiring, much like that research and development grant, but we have some employee training programs that are available through the state of Illinois, and again, these programs are being held up at the moment, but check back with your local workforce area with a business services rep to see if any of these items are currently working. We have some customized training opportunities where you can bring specific training specifically for your organization to your company. We have some incumbent worker training, which means rather than laying off somebody, you might be able to do some training to keep them working. On-the-job training is related to bringing individuals to your workplace, training them to do the job as you go, and getting reimbursed for all three of these programs. You can get reimbursed for some of those training dollars through these programs. And then the job training and economic development program is very much like the other ones, where you hire somebody who has been possibly economically disadvantaged, and you can get them trained and up to speed in your actual location to get some work done. So check out the details on the training programs on Illinois. You enhance business by getting capital through the Illinois Innovation Council. And the Brookings Institute recently noted more than 95% of new jobs are derived from business expansion or startup activity. So expanding and building your business, there's this Advantage Illinois program. And we actually had an entire webinar on the Advantage Illinois program with Stan, who is the director of the program. So you can watch that webinar and find out more about the program. It gives you capital access to the program dollars, and it is a participation loan program. And it will help accelerate investments and ease the credit crunch for small businesses. There's been over $78 million from the federal government for this program, and it has started in 2010, and as people borrow the money, they pay it back, and then the money is still there. So it helps multiple businesses over time as the businesses who originally borrowed the money pay it back. So this is a great program to check out to see, to use the money, and then you can possibly even make those tax credits work for you on the other end of the time period. Let's move on to the enterprise zone. Eric, you want to talk about these areas?
Sure. So this is actually something you would apply with the local officials. There's only a certain amount of areas throughout the state, so it's very specific on a map or your address if you qualify to be in this enterprise zone. And similar to what I said on that new market tax credits, it's trying to revitalize neighborhoods or low-income areas, so that's where they get designated on a map or census area. So hiring in these enterprise zones could trigger several incentives. You make investments, so there's real property tax abatement from a local community to reduce your property tax paid for new construction and those building materials. There could be sales tax exemptions for those building materials and the upgrades there. and it'd be full 100% sales tax exemption. There's investment tax credits to come off your corporate tax liability, and even utility tax reductions and incentives. So it can be very lucrative if you're located in enterprise zone or looking to find a building or an area. That's something to double check. Maybe they'd have an enterprise zone and you can have access to those extra incentives. And so there's several communities around that have that. More specifically, there's this River Ridge redevelopment zone that encompasses Aurora, East St. Louis, Elgin, Peoria, and Rockford. That also has these specific incentives for those river communities.
So those communities would know that they are eligible for this tax credit.
Correct.
And businesses coming into that area are apprised of that, so that if they want to build or invest, they might want to think about doing it along a river.
Right. So most communities or counties will have a local contact enterprise zone application and administer it, and there's yearly compliance to make sure you get those incentives set up.
Great, great. Well, I would like to thank very much Eric Levenhagen from McGladrey for joining us today and sharing his time and his knowledge with us. It must really help you do your job having all of that economic development background in place. So we appreciate you sharing that with us.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, before everybody leaves today, I would like for you to take just a couple of moments to fill out our poll questions for us. If you did not already have a chance to download the handouts, they are in the upper right-hand corner again. And we thank you for joining us today. If you ever have any questions for us at Illinois WorkNet, you are welcome to send them to us at info@illinoisworknet.com, and we thank you very much for joining us. And I'm going to